Today, I'm going to show you how to make a lotus pendant, Jamie's favorite flower. I'm really into flowers, and I know Jamie especially loves her lotus. So this is the inspiration behind this little pendant. Because she really likes lotus flowers. So what we're going to do today is make a lotus pendant out of 18 gauge soft wire. Soft because you want it pliable enough to be able to manipulate it into the shape that you want it to be. And 18 gauge because you want it sturdy enough so that it holds its shape really well when wearing. You have to start by getting a foot of wire, and we want to make sure that we flush cut the tip. And if you don't know what that is, what we're going to do is we want to make sure that we have a perfectly finished edge to start with. So we're going to get our cutters using this edge of it, and we're going to just make sure that the wire is flush.
And most importantly, notice how JoAnn put her finger over the cutter so that the piece that came off didn't fly into the air. So if you could reenact that again, JoAnn, just showing how you covered the end of the wire with your finger and it didn't fly. That's probably the most important thing today.
Safety is very important.
Very key.
Now, to start, we're going to coil by using our round nose plier at the tip, making sure that we don't feel any of the wire protruding. We're going to just make one loop until the edge of the wire just touches. Then we transfer to the flat nose plier to complete the coil. We grab hold of the loop and we're going to just rotate, following the shape of the coil, until we make 2 complete revolutions. The way to count the revolutions is you start from where the wire first started, that's 1 circle, 1 revolution, and you follow it and you stop it where your wire first started, and that makes 2 complete revolutions. After you make your 2 full coils, what you want to do is hammer the coils to harden them with your frets number 6 hammer. Now we're going to switch to my favorite tool, the small wrap and tap. I don't know why I have a hard time remembering the name. If you look at it, this particular one has 6 different diameters on it, and we're going to reference it by numbering them 1 through 6, 1 being the smallest diameter all the way up to 6, which is the largest. So today the first loop we're going to make is on the number 3 diameter. And what you're going to do is you're going to put the coil in your left hand with the tail facing you, putting the wire in the number 3 diameter, and we're going to make 1 circle. And what it is it's a combination of pushing forward with your wrist while holding this, and then finishing it off by just grabbing the tail of the wire. And now you have 1 loop. That's on the number 3. And we're going to make 1 more loop right next to it, adjacent to it, with the number 3. And we like to kind of have our loops fairly close together, because imagine you have this really small coil and we're going to end up making 7 loops, around it. So we kind of really have to make sure that they're pretty tight next to each other. Okay, so
overlapping is okay.
Yes, overlapping is okay. because we can always adjust the placement later. Now we've made our 2 loops with a number 3. I'm going to switch to number 4, the 4th largest, and we're going to make 1 loop right next to it. Okay. Now we're going to make 3 loops with the number 5. And you'll notice that because it's soft wire, it's really pliable. So that's one reason to use it instead of half hard. If you used half hard wire, it's going to be too bouncy. And it's going to be fighting you, not wanting to keep it shaped this way.
One thing I also notice while you do this movement is that when you bring the wire around, you bring it behind the lotus pendant.
Correct, correct. Your loops will always be working behind the one before it. Now we have 6 loops and we'll make our final loop on number 4. Kind of looks like a cloud now, doesn't it? But what we're going to do is, because we want it to be like a lotus, we're going to take our chain nose plier and we're now going to make each loop look more like a leaf. To do that, what you do is you put your chain nose plier at about 12 o'clock on the loop. And while this hand, your right hand, moves forward in a forward motion, you're going to place your thumb against the wire and just roll.
Does your thumb steady the wire so it doesn't?
Yes, and it also gives it support so that you don't lose the integrity of the shape of the loop. Now, in order to do the other side, we're going to flip it over, do the same thing. I put the tip of the chain nose right next to the indentation that I've just made. And with the same motion, you have your little leaf shape. And you're going to continue to do this on each loop. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly at 12 o'clock. If you want them to have like a little off-center shape, what you can do is you can work at 11 or 10 o'clock. And that way, you might even have to just do it on one side if you want to give it sort of that little curvy look.
That's cute.
Okay. So this is where you get to be creative. You can do whatever you want. Then again.
I really like that tip you shared about flipping it over.
Yes.
Because then you don't have to do an awkward hand motion.
Correct.
When you stay on just the top side.
And we always at the Bead Gallery stress ergonomics, because you want to be able to continue doing your jewelry, your beading for many, many years. You don't want to be hampered by injuries. And I think you could probably alter the number of leaves or petals, but you should always try to keep it at an odd number. For some reason, visually, odd numbers are more pleasing to the eye than even numbers. And while you're doing it, you can also sort of manipulate the way it sits.
So JoAnn, if we were to make a larger lotus pendant, would you use a larger gauge wire and the bigger diameters of the wrap and tap?
Yes, you might even, what I would do is you could even go up to 16 gauge, and there is another wrap and tap that's larger, the medium and the large. Then that way you could make larger loops. So then if you use 16 gauge, you'd probably want to start with one of the larger diameters to begin with your first few petals, and then work your way on the larger wrap and tap.
I think I'd like to make a really big lotus pendant for myself, now that I've seen this video.
That's what's nice about beading, I think, because you can take a basic idea and personalize it. You can take it the next step and do something original with it. Okay, now for instance, this leaf is facing upward, so what I might want to do on the opposite side is do that same sort of, so that it sort of faces up that way too. You can do that. Gives it a different personality. Okay. Now, if we just left it like this, it's still pretty pliable. So what we want to do is we really want to keep this shape. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hammer the tips of the petals. And what this will do is ensure that, one, it gives it more strength, and it will also work harden the item. And I like to use the frets number 6 hammer, because on one side is a rubber tip and the other is a chasing hammer. But when you want to work harden your project, what you're going to use is the chasing hammer. And you want to be sure to only hammer the tips of the petals. You don't want to hammer areas where the wires intersect, because what this can do in the future is weaken the wire and it may eventually break, and you don't want to have an item break after you've spent so much time making it. So again, we're just going to hammer the tips, and you can see it gives it more of a dimension. And what I'm doing is I'm just moving the piece so that the tips of the petals are on the bench block. And after you do this, it's going to be staying in this shape. As you notice, it's a lot firmer. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to need to connect the first petal to the last petal. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the extra wire and we're going to gently put the wire through the first petal.
It does distort the leaf a bit, right, for just a short period?
Yes, it does. However, this can be easily remedied by just using your chain nose when we're done. And you want to get it as close as you can so that they sort of kiss. And this part of the wire will be easy to manipulate because you haven't hammered it hard. Mm-hmm. So now it's sticking out to the front. Then we're going to complete the closure by putting it back into the last petal.
So because the wire doesn't respond like a thread and you can't just easily weave it in and out, I notice how you shape the wire to kind of coax it to go into it.
Yes. And you can also use your tools. Just gently pull. Kind of close the gap just a little bit at a time. And you can see where it's complete. So then now all you do is you take your cutter and you just, again, cover your work. And like you do when you do a wire wrap, you want to finish.
So you tuck the ends in with the chain nose pliers.
Correct. And there you have it. Now, it's a little lumpy right now. So what you can do is you can get your nylon end and just hammer it flat. And that way it's on one plane. And now, to give it some interest, what you can do is you can get your chain nose and just sort of work with the petals. And there is your completed lotus. Yay! This is me hammering and work hardening the lotus. This is a way to get all your aggressions out. Like if your boss made you mad, or your kids are driving you crazy, there you go. And we're going to make one what would I call it? Loop. Okay. And that's going to be the never mind. Then we're going to move on